My name's Pauline, I'm a service manager for an inpatient unit.
My name's David. I'm one of the junior doctors who works in the inpatient psychiatric units.
Section 5.2 is a temporary hold for assessment to detain an informal or a voluntary inpatient in a hospital to ensure their immediate safety whilst there is further assessment under the Mental Health Act.
Section 5.2 is a temporary hold which is put on by a ward doctor such as myself or an approved clinician and will be due to concerns about a deterioration in a service user's health. This can include a lack of capacity, or it could be because they've had a deterioration which has meant that they might be a harm to themselves or others, which mean that we'd want them to stay in hospital for a longer period. Section 5.2 can last up to 72 hours, but it's a hold for assessment and it has to be triggered when the 5.2 is put in place. The assessment itself will be by an AMP and two doctors. It will usually be the doctor who's responsible for the care of the service user and, if possible, a doctor who knows the service user, such as their GP. Between the two doctors and the AMP, they'll decide whether the person should be detained under a Section 2 or a Section 3, or whether the Section 5.2 can be rescinded and the person can remain in hospital on an informal basis.
A person cannot appeal against a Section 5.2, which is why prompt assessment is so important. The person should be not on a Section 5.2 any longer than necessary to ensure they receive further assessment. We had a gentleman that was on the ward, a young man that's got a history of mental health problems dating back for some years. He was an informal service user, been on the ward 2 or 3 weeks. During the shift, it was really apparent that he was becoming really unwell and becoming really distressed. He was expressing paranoid ideas. He was demanding to leave the ward. He became abusive to a member of staff and making threats to hurt his family and to staff. So I called the ward doctor who came to assess this young gentleman. And do you want to go through with what happened?
Yeah, so obviously I came and attended the situation, took advice from the staff as to what had happened, witnessed him being quite aggressive as well, both verbally aggressive, and there was this physical aggression, an instance where he tried to push a member of staff, and I felt that as the ward doctor it was my responsibility to make sure that he stayed in hospital. Obviously, as he was an informal patient, he could leave, so it was important for me to act quickly and try and detain him under a Section 5.2, because he was a man who was suffering from psychotic symptoms anyway, and he had a further deterioration in mental state, and there were clearly possible issues around harming himself or particularly harming his family because of worsening paranoid beliefs. So those were the kind of examples, and that was the kind of documentation and the words that I used on the form itself to try and show that he needed to be sectioned.
Yeah. Once the 5.2 had been completed, it was my responsibility to check that documentation and to receipt the forms and to make sure that the Mental Health Act administrator got that immediately. It was really important that the gentleman understood his rights and understood the process of what would happen next. I immediately informed the AMP on duty that day, and also informed his nearest relative as well of what had happened during that shift. The ward consultant came down and assessed him along with the GP and the AMP, who then made a decision to detain him under a Section 3 of the Mental Health Act.